At 03:17 local time, somewhere in the Gulf, a number appeared on a screen. Iran just fired dozens of missiles. They had spent 6 months counting exactly how many interceptor missiles the U.S. strike group carried, 91 rounds. So they launched exactly 89 missiles in Wave 1, just enough to drain the entire U.S. defense system dry. The moment America fired its last interceptor, Wave 2 launched 38 missiles, nothing left to stop them. Petty Officer First Class Dana Reyes had run the water curtain drill 17 times. He knew the checklist the way he knew his own breathing. Not thought, just sequence. Step 1. Step 2. Step 3. He had never run it for real. Nobody on the Roosevelt had. The drill existed because doctrine required it. And doctrine required it because someone, somewhere, had once run the math on what a penetrating warhead would do to the O3 level at full yield. And the answer to that math was a number that never appeared in any public document. He was 40 seconds into his checklist when the second missile hit. That 40 seconds is the reason the story does not end differently. But we are not there yet. The E-2D Hawkeye Carlson Topwatch pushed 127 track files to the Combat Information Center of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, 127 simultaneous inbound contacts, ballistic trajectories, low-altitude cruise, sea skimmers at 4 meters, flying below the radar floor where fire control solutions fragment and response windows compress to seconds, launched from 4 bearing points across the northern Gulf within an 11-second window. The strike group's offensive planning had been wargamed in Bahrain against a maximum modeled swarm of 60 contacts. Nobody had been asked to model this. The tactical action officer looked at the track file count. Then he looked at the magazine count. He did the arithmetic in the time it took the display to populate. He did not yell. He said it flat, the way a man reads a figure he has already checked twice and does not want to check a third time. Brace. Because the math said 89 contacts in Wave 1, and the math said 91 SM-6 rounds in the combined strike group magazine. That is not a safety margin. That is a gap of 2. A gap of 2 means that when the last interceptor fires, 38 contacts are still airborne. And when 38 contacts are still airborne with 0 intercepts remaining, you are no longer running a defense. You are absorbing an impact and choosing where. 4 minutes and 11 seconds. That is the number that matters, not the 127, not the gap of 2. 4 minutes and 11 seconds was the separation between Wave 1 and Wave 2. And that separation was not a countdown. It was not a timer set by a clock in a command bunker somewhere north of Bandar Abbas. It was a trigger. Now hold that number, 411, because the clock started the moment the first SM-6 left the rail on USS Jason Dunham. And it is already running. In a planning room that has not been identified in any declassified document, a senior IRGC Aerospace Force officer looked at a spreadsheet that his intelligence cell had spent 6 months building. The spreadsheet had one column that mattered. Magazine count. Not modeled magazine count. Not estimated magazine count. Actual magazine count. Reconstructed from commercial satellite pass data. AIS tracking during port calls in Bahrain. Open source analysis of tender support schedules, and a series of low observable UAV observation passes that the Roosevelt's crew never detected, because the UAVs were flying at an altitude and on a bearing that the carrier's sensor coverage did not prioritize. The number in that column was 91. He looked at it for a long time. Then he drew a line through it and wrote 89 beneath it, because 91 was the capacity, 89 was the architecture. Wave 1 would not overwhelm the defense. Wave 1 would solve for it. It would drain 91 rounds with a 2-round margin remaining. Just enough that the Aegis destroyers would fire their last interceptors believing they still had something left, believing the math was still working in their favor right up until the moment it wasn't. He did not need to fire 100 contacts. He did not need to overwhelm anything. He needed to fit the wave to the magazine, and he did. 411, 11 on the clock. Well flies. This is the moment, if you have been tracking the arithmetic since the Teo said brace, where you understand something that the Pentagon's initial press statement took 48 hours to frame, in language that would not cause a press pool to ask the question nobody wanted asked. Wave 1 was not the attack. Wave 1 was a reload timer. The real attack. 38 sea skimmers, flying at 4 meters below the radar floor, tying to the exact second the defensive magazine went dry, had been airborne for 4 minutes and 11 seconds before a single operator in the Roosevelt's CIC knew it existed. It launched on sensor confirmation of the first SM-6 leaving the rail, not on a clock, on a kill chain trigger. The moment the strike group committed its magazine to Wave 1, the commitment was irreversible. Every interceptor that killed a Wave 1 contact was a round that would not exist 61 seconds later when the CIWS opened fire on what was coming next. 2:30 on the clock. The CIWS, the Phalanx Close-In Weapon System. The carrier's last kinetic layer, after the Aegis envelope collapses, has an effective engagement range of roughly 1,500 meters. It rotates. It tracks. It fires 20 rounds per second of 20mm tungsten. Against a single inbound at any bearing, it is devastatingly effective. Against 38 simultaneous inbounds on 4 bearing angles at 400 meters per second, it has to choose. It has to choose before the contacts arrive. It has a window 90 seconds from top watch track confirmation to terminal phase to make that choice correctly. Petty Officer Reyes was in the damage control station 2 decks below the flight deck. He had no visibility on the tactical picture. He had no comms with the CIC during the engagement window. He had his checklist and a timer running on the bulkhead above his station. The drill said 45 seconds for a full water curtain activation sequence. He had run it in 40 seconds once, during an inspection, when he was trying to impress a chief who was not easily impressed. He started the checklist at do 32277. 1000 lock. The CIWS opened fire at 0322-2014. In 91 seconds, the Phalanx systems on the Roosevelt and the Jason Dunham killed 31 of the 38 inbounds. 3 bearing angles held. The geometry worked. The response was textbook. The crew performed exactly as trained. Bearing 037 was different. Northeast, low, fast, below the radar floor until 6.2 kilometers range, where they reappeared inside the engagement envelope with a closure rate that compressed the fire control solution window to under 4 seconds. 3 contacts, reserved from Wave 2, assigned exclusively to bearing 037 by the Iranian mission architect, not because it was a design flaw in the Phalanx. It wasn't, but because it was a positional gap. A gap created by the specific anchorage the Roosevelt had maintained for 11 hours. A position that had been observed by IRGC-ISR assets for 6 consecutive days. The Iranian commander did not guess bearing 037. He watched the Roosevelt hold that position until he was certain. Then he assigned his kill package to the vector she had chosen for herself. The Phalanx engaged bearing 037. It killed one of the 3. 020 on the clock. 2 hit. Now pay close attention, because this is where the official timeline and the classified assessment separate. The first impact struck the aft flight deck, starboard side. Flight deck armor absorbed significant blast energy. Fires were controlled in 47 minutes. The EDE acknowledged this in the initial press statement with the phrase, "flight deck structural damage under assessment." That phrase is accurate. It is also complete. It covers everything the first missile did. The second missile is where the statement ends and the silence begins. It was a penetrating warhead variant. Low drag body, delayed fusee sequence. It did not impact the flight deck surface. It transited the 03 level. The fuse was designed to detonate inside the structure, not on it. Internal blast, internal fragmentation, systems that live inside the ship rather than on it. Systems whose operational status has not appeared in any public damage assessment, because the damage assessment for the second impact was classified within 6 minutes of confirmation. 6 minutes. On the order of a 3-star in Bahrain, who looked at one specific number in that report and understood immediately what it meant if it circulated. That classification decision happened before the fires on the flight deck were controlled. That is not a standard damage assessment timeline. Standard assessments take hours. 6 minutes means someone looked at the number and made a decision before the data was fully compiled. Which means the number in question did not require full compilation. It was immediately, unambiguously clear to anyone with the context to read it. The operational limitation on flight operations created by the second impact has not been released in any public statement. The Roosevelt is described as operational. The sortie rate ceiling that defines what operational means in this context is the number that was classified in 6 minutes. Petty Officer Reyes completed his water curtain activation at 032247. The second missile hit at 0322-2053. 40 seconds of activation time before impact. The water curtain partially defeated the fusee sequence. Detonation assessed at 60 to 65% of design yield. 6 seconds earlier and the partial defeat may not have occurred. 6 seconds. Here is what the IRGC mission architect learned from this engagement that he could not have learned any other way. He learned the bearing 037 geometry, confirmed effective at terminal phase. He learned the top watch net management threshold. Top watch went off the tactical net for 90 seconds during the engagement window. A sensor saturation response that is defensible inside a compressed timeline, and that created a retargeting gap the Aegis destroyers could not recover from. He learned the water curtain activation window. 40 seconds is the operational buffer the damage control crew operates on. He learned the magazine drain number, 91 confirmed, not modeled. He did not build this engagement as a terminal solution. A commander who engineers a 4-layer architecture around precise magazine arithmetic, commercial satellite surveillance, and a kill chain trigger does not do it to end something. He does it to learn something. Every piece of information the engagement produced, the geometry confirmation, the net management threshold, the activation window, the drain number, is an input to the next architecture. This was a reconnaissance in force dressed as an attack. He sent 38 missiles through the most sophisticated naval defense system in the history of warfare. And he got 2 impacts and a classified damage report and a sortie rate ceiling that the Navy will not release. He got his answer. The question now, the one no after-action report addresses directly, the one the analysts in closed rooms are circling without landing on, is not how to stop the next swarm. The question is, what was designed to come after the proof of concept? Because the commander who built this did not build it to be the last engagement. He built it to be the first data point. The bearing is confirmed, the magazine is mapped, the window is measured, the gap in the net management protocol is documented. He knows the lock, he has touched it, he knows it opens. Petty Officer Reyes finished the water curtain drill at 032237 and moved to the next item on his checklist. He did not know about the fusée yield. He did not know about the 6-minute classification decision. He did not know that the gap between his drill completion time and the impact time was the operational variable that separated a classified damage report from a conversation about whether carriers can survive the next decade of missile technology. He ran the checklist the way he had run it 17 times before. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3. He was trying to impress no one. He was just fast. The Roosevelt didn't sink. She is underway. She is operational in the specific and carefully worded sense that the Navy has chosen. The flight deck damage is being managed. The 03 level assessment is classified. The bearing 037 coverage gap is being addressed in a repositioning doctrine that has not been published. The top watch debrief is ongoing in a room where the doors are closed. And the commander who designed this has his proof. He didn't need to sink the Roosevelt. He needed to touch her. He needed to prove that magazine arithmetic, commercial satellite data, and a kill chain trigger were sufficient to reach the most defended ship in the history of naval warfare. The proof exists. The Roosevelt didn't sink, but every flag officer in 2 navies understands what that silence means. They tested the lock, and the lock opened.